In today's English lesson, you are going to learn about 30 terms you can use when you want to talk about Ramadan in English. I do have some students in my classroom who are Muslim, so they helped me with this. Fortune, Shaman, Mustafa, Mohammed, Jonas, Wahab. Thank you all. Any of the mistakes I make in this English lesson will be my own, not my students. And the first thing I should say is that there are about 2 billion Muslims in the world. There is no way I can talk about all of them. So this English lesson is going to focus on the English terms that Sunni Muslims might use. And we will talk a little later about the difference between Sunni and Shia, but let's first talk about these two terms, Islam and Muslim. The religion is called Islam, but the people who follow that religion are called Muslims. And you might hear Western religions in English, and that is talking about three religions we call Abrahamic religions. They all believe in one God. In that picture, there is a star that represents the Jewish religion, Judaism. That star appears on the flag for Israel, and in English, we say it is the Star of David. In the middle, it looks like a cross with the Star of David. We will talk more about what a cross is in English, but that symbol is for Christianity. People who follow that religion, we call them Christians. And that last symbol, it's like a moon and a star. We call that the crescent moon, and it represents Islam. You might see the crescent moon on the flag of Turkey or Turkey. And the reason they are called the Abrahamic religions is because they follow the teachings of this person we call Abraham or Ibrahim. And I know Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have some very big differences, but they do all follow the same God. You might hear him called Yahweh in Judaism, God, Jesus, Holy Spirit in Christianity, and Allah in Islam, but they are all the same God. And a huge important person in all three of these religions is a person named Abraham or Ibrahim. Notice I don't have a picture of what Ibrahim might have looked like. Muslims do not believe in showing pictures of what those prophets might have looked like. Prophets. We will talk more about who they are in a minute, but anytime you hear prophet in English, think a message from God. Prophets receive messages from God. So instead of a picture, I have some really fancy writing to represent Ibrahim. And that fancy writing we might call calligraphy. The official definition, beautiful and artistic handwriting. The Quran is often written in calligraphy to make the words look beautiful. And if you don't know what the Quran is, don't worry. In just a few minutes, you will know. Many Muslims believe that creating images of prophets, especially the Prophet Muhammad, could lead to idol worship, which Islam strongly disapproves. Let's talk more about Ibrahim. All three religions trace their roots to Abraham, a central figure in the Hebrew Bible. We will call that book later the Torah, the Christian Bible, and the Quran. How about this term, monotheistic or monotheism? If a religion only believes in one God, we call it monotheistic. If you have ever heard of the religion that the ancient Egyptians followed, that was polytheistic. There were many gods in that religion. And idolatry means you are worshiping something other than God. And in all three religions, that is a big no-no. You shouldn't do it. If you are a Christian, you may have heard of this person, Jesus. He does appear in the Quran, but his name is Isa. In Hebrew, the language most linked to Judaism, Abraham means the father of many. In the Quran, that is the holy book of Muslims, there are over 20 prophets. Let's get the official definition of what a prophet is in English. That is a person who receives messages from God and teaches people about them. Abraham was one prophet. Isa was another prophet, and the final prophet, that was the prophet Muhammad. Muslims believe that Muhammad was the last prophet who received messages from God and shared them with his people. In English, you might hear the angel Gabriel. In the Quran, the angel Gabriel is called Jibril, but those messages came through the angel Gabriel or Jibril. Since all three of these religions are linked, let's talk about them and their holy books. The Torah is the holy book of Judaism. The Torah, or the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, contain the promise Abraham made to God to be faithful and obey. And there is an example of some Hebrew written. Maybe you have heard of the Bible. That is the holy book for Christians. The Old Testament, that's the Torah, the first half of the Bible. And the New Testament introduces Jesus Christ, whom Christians believe fulfills the Jewish prophecy. Christians believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Muslims believe that Jesus, or Isa, is a major prophet, but not the Son of God. I've already mentioned the Quran a couple times. Let's get the official definition. It is the holy book for Muslims. The Quran acknowledges Abraham as a prophet and recognizes parts of Jewish and Christian writings. So the Torah came first, then the Bible, and finally the Quran. Now, let's talk about some major countries that have a lot of Muslims living in there. And we'll also talk about 2 different kinds of Muslims, Sunnis and Shias. Did you know? The country of Indonesia is home to the most Muslims. Most people there are Sunni Muslim. Saudi Arabia, a major country for Sunni Muslims, and Sunnis are about 90% of the Muslim population. The difference between Sunnis and Shias, so Sunni Muslims, remember 90% of the Muslim population, believes that the leaders, or sometimes you will hear them called caliphs, should be chosen by the Muslim community. So the leaders are chosen by the community. Shias believe something differently, and Iran is home to the most Shia Muslims. They believe that the leaders or the imams should be from Muhammad's family. And the person who took over for the Prophet Muhammad is named Ali, and he was his cousin and son-in-law. So to really quickly sum up a major difference between Shia Muslims and Sunni Muslims believe that the leaders should be chosen by the people. Shia Muslims believe they should be directly related to the Prophet Muhammad. Let's go back to Indonesia for a second. In Indonesia, there are approximately 241.5 million Muslims in 2022, and nearly all of them were Sunni Muslims. In Saudi Arabia, right around 90% of the population are Sunni. And it's just the opposite in Iran. About 90% of the population is Shia Muslim. In English, you might hear the 5 pillars of Islam, like the 5 most important things you should do in Islam. That picture, you can see pillars. They sometimes hold up buildings, but they provide strength to the building. One of the 5 pillars of Islam is called the Shahada. Let's talk about what that means. It means believing in one God and the Prophet Muhammad. The belief that there is only one God, Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger. A Muslim says the Shahada to show they believe in one God and the Prophet Muhammad. And this prayer is usually said in Arabic, even if the person speaks a different language. Another pillar of Islam is called the Salah. And that means that you pray 5 times a day. Muslims pray 5 times a day to remember and thank God. And when Muslims pray, they face the holy city of Mecca, which we will talk more about in just a minute. Another of the 5 pillars of Islam is called the zakat. And in simple terms, it means helping the poor. Muslims give a small part of their money to help the poor, about 2.5%. The zakat helps poor people buy food and clothes. Now, I know this whole lesson is about Ramadan, and this might be the first official time that I mention Ramadan. Psalm. What is that? That means you don't eat during the holy month of Ramadan. Well, not the entire day. During Ramadan, Muslims do not eat or drink, even water, from sunrise to sunset. During Psalm, Muslims fast to feel closer to God. Let's just make sure you know what I'm talking about when I say fast. You might know the English word to mean like somebody is running fast. It might have something to do with speed, but no, here fasting means not eating. And for Muslims during Ramadan, it also means not drinking either. Fast, to not eat or drink for a period of time, often for religious reasons. Muslims fast from sunrise to sunset during Ramadan. Muslims can't even drink water while the sun is up. Now, if you are very sick, or if you are very young, or if you are pregnant, you do not have to fast during Ramadan. And the last of the 5 pillars of Islam is called the Hajj. And that is when you make a trip to the holy city of Mecca, which is located in Saudi Arabia. Once in their life, if they can, Muslims travel to Mecca, a holy city in Saudi Arabia. Many Muslims go to Hajj to pray at the Kaaba. What is the Kaaba? Well, take a look at that picture. You can see that arrow pointing to the Kaaba. It's a sacred building in Mecca that Muslims face when they pray. It is the most important place in Islam. Every year, millions of Muslims travel to Mecca to walk around the Kaaba during Hajj. And traveling to Mecca might be called a pilgrimage. Let's talk about what a pilgrimage is. It's a special journey to a holy place for religious reasons. Every year, many Muslims make a pilgrimage to Mecca to take part in Hajj. If you don't have enough money, if you aren't feeling strong enough to make the Hajj once in your lifetime, it is okay. You only have to make the Hajj if you can do it. I don't know how controversial I want to get, but sometimes Shia Muslims and Sunni Muslims have disagreements. There are some Shia Muslims who say that they will not make the Hajj. They might not be exactly happy the way Saudi Arabia is handling things now. So instead, they take the money they would have spent on the pilgrimage and give it to charity instead. I have only heard about this from a few of my friends who are Shia. Please let me know in the comments. Have you heard of this? Let's get the official definition of Ramadan, a holy month of fasting for Muslims. Many Muslims around the world fast during Ramadan. Ramadan lasts between 28 and 30 days. It is based on the moon. Now, many of these words come from Arabic, but we just kind of changed the pronunciation in English. So this is suhoor, and it means the early morning meal before fasting begins. Before dawn, we will talk about dawn in just a minute. Muslims eat suhoor to prepare for the day. And after the sunset comes iftar. That is the evening meal that breaks the fast. Families gather for iftar when the sun sets. Break the fast, that means you have started to eat after fasting for a time, and that's where we get the English word breakfast. Notice it's spelled break fast, like breaking the fast. I think we just got lazy in English and we call it breakfast. Dawn. What does that mean? The time early in the morning when the sun begins to rise. Suhoor must be eaten before dawn. Sunset. Those two pictures, they look very similar, but dawn is when the sun is rising. Sunset is when the sun is falling or setting. The time in the evening when the sun goes down. Muslims can break their fast at sunset. We talked about charity earlier. Let's get the official definition: giving to people in need. Charity is important in Ramadan, and many people donate food and money. Have you ever heard of a mosque in English? That is the place where Muslims go to pray. Many people go to the mosque for special prayers during Ramadan. Taraweeh. What is that? Special, extra prayers performed at night during Ramadan. And for most Muslims, during these prayers, they feel closer to God. Many Muslims go to the mosque for Taraweeh prayers. Ooh, I like this one. Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Fitr. It is the festival, the big party at the end of Ramadan. Eid al-Fitr is a time for celebration and family gatherings. If you want to wish somebody to have like a really good Eid, you might say Eid Mubarak. That means happy Eid in English. Ramadan is a time for reflection for Muslims. Let's talk about what that means. Thinking deeply about something, often in a spiritual way. Ramadan is a time for reflection and self-improvement. And I did mention the word spiritual before, and that is related to religion and the soul. Ramadan is a spiritual time for Muslims to grow closer to God. I hope I didn't mess up too badly. If you enjoyed this English lesson, please go ahead and hit that like button. And right down there is another English lesson YouTube thinks you might like. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.